And now I would like to welcome the Catholic Church.
A Mormon, a Muslim, and 2 non-practicing Catholics, with the generous support of our Thesis advisors, an atheist and a Jew, were given the task of rebranding one of the oldest and largest institutions in the world, the Catholic Church. So to begin, we wanted to understand what the Catholic Church was about. And to do that, we wanted to go inside and understand it from internally, and then also externally, and how it has changed in being relating to culture. And this is what we found.
Reach out, touch faith.
Shrouded and slowed by 2,000 years of tradition, the problem that we are finding in the Catholic Church today is that it is no longer trusted. So we began to unpack what trust meant, how people lose confidence, and more specifically, who was losing confidence. Inside the church, the clergy, the faithful, the disenfranchised who had left, and then also, because we'd lost this cultural relevance that we'd once had, how it has affected the greater public. And so we asked ourselves an even larger question. Would the founding CEO recognize his church today? And in order to understand that, we wanted to know who he was and understand who Jesus was from his words. So in his own words, I am the good shepherd, because he led his flock and protected it.
He also said, I am the door to salvation. He is a direct way to heaven. He also said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And that is his life was a roadmap for how we should live.
He said, I am the light of the world, a beacon of hope. And with these words, Jesus Christ handed his church to Peter and said, you are Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, one holy apostolic church. He also left Peter with the unifying brand message, a simple one. Love God, love thy neighbor, love thyself. Simple, yet powerful message. But how was this message received?
In the beginning, only a few joined the church. The poor, the weak, the elderly, and even women. But in 351 AD, the Catholic Church got the greatest celebrity endorsement, with Constantine the Great converting to Catholicism. From then on, the church flourished, and it went from a persecuted minority to a state religion. So we wanted to understand the environment in which it thrived. It was in a monoculture, a leader-follower society, one where information and support was centralized to those in power. Monarchs were Catholics, and the church had a seat in every court. And so in branding terms, they went from a challenger brand to an established one. With this growth, they were able to contribute to culture. We know of a few of the popular ones, like art and the Renaissance. In healthcare, we know that they were the first non-governmental entity to provide healthcare for all. In education, they've established universities such as Oxford, Georgetown, and Notre Dame. And let's not forget what they're most known for, charity, with a great example of Mother Teresa of Calcutta. But let's look at some of their surprising greatest hits.
I know, not what you thought. But at the time that the church was established, men and women were not permitted to worship together. And when Christ came and introduced his gospel, he taught that men and women were equal in the sight of God. And with that, they were permitted to worship together, united. In the 9th century, monks established the first musical notation system, the same system we use today, that has become a universal language of expression. And also, the Gregorian calendar, which we use today through most of the world to track seminal moments like births, anniversaries, marriages, graduations.
Something else we can all relate to, the weather. The Jesuit scholars were instrumental in creating observational networks that were able to predict the arrival of hurricanes as well as their routes. In 1882, a priest identified a need and established a way for widows and orphans to become economically secure and financially stable. This organization is now known as the Knights of Columbus, and it is the modern-day model for life insurance. One Pope's encyclical provided the founding principles of workers' rights, rights that we all come to expect: a fair wage, adequate working conditions, and the right for workers to form trade unions. In scientific method, yes, the Catholic Church, contrary to popular belief, embraced science. So much so that they hung out with people, scholars, outside of the church, Albert Einstein, and Monsignor George Lemaitre created a theory of the expansion of the universe, a little theory we now know as the Big Bang Theory.
So from these examples, we can tell that the church has truly shaped culture. They created realities that we take for granted today. But they haven't accomplished this without facing a few bumps in the road. The church has survived the Great Schism, the Crusades, the Reformation, and the Spanish Inquisition. I'm going to read a quote that best describes the adversities that face the church. The church is one of the oldest organizations in the world and has endured countless revolutions, wars, and paradigm shifts, as well as scandals, theological sea changes, and crises within. This is not the first time the church's moral standing and authority have been questioned, nor will it be the last. So we're now midway in the 20th century, and we're still growing. But something big is about to happen.
It's a time of great tension in America and the world, a time where inequalities run rampant, where large groups of society are told they're not allowed basic civil rights. It's a time of instant communication, a time where people take to the streets to stand up against government, a time where politics are polarizing and parties are moving further and further away from the middle. It's also a time where gender roles are in flux, yet women still fight for the rights to their bodies. It's 1962, and Pope John Paul XXIII has received a calling from Christ. He wakes up one morning and tells his secretary that Christ has commanded him to go out, call a council to align the Catholic Church with the modern world. This council would become known as Vatican II. Over the course of 3 years, 2 popes, and 16 documents, Vatican II addressed various issues in an attempt to open the doors, make Catholicism approachable and sensible for the modern faith seeker.
So after coming across Vatican II, as a team we started to try to understand what these 16 documents amassed to. And what it came to was essentially a brand brief from Pope John XXIII to modernize the Catholic Church. But what we found is that this brief that was given out by the Pope was not universally adopted. And so what it led to was a fracturing amongst the Catholic faith. On one end of the spectrum, you had the traditional Catholics. On the other, you had the modern. And the traditional were holding fast to the traditions that had been in existence for 1,600 years. And they wanted to maintain Mass in Latin, and it was very much a one-size-fits-all approach to Catholicism. On the other hand, the modern Catholics, were adapting and embracing this new change and catching up with contemporary society. They applied modern musical programs, and they started having Mass in local languages so that everybody could understand and worship together. And what this ultimately resulted in, this fractured messaging, was that the church had an inconsistent experience across the world. And so take, for example, a big global brand that we all know, McDonald's. Many of us have come across McDonald's. We've eaten there, most of the time in an emergency. But we've come to expect and trust what we're going to get there, whether we really like it or not. And internationally, we have the same experience, and we've come to trust it and understand what that is. Catholics were not having that anymore. They were unable to understand where they fit in, and they really had to search to understand if they fit into one parish or the other. And that takes us up to today, 2013. The Catholic Church has 1.2 billion members. 1/6 of the world is Catholic. And it is still growing. We haven't stopped. But what we've noticed is that the growth is no longer happening in our foundation in the first world. It's shifted into the third world and developing countries. And what that means for us is a leading indicator of something gone wrong within the first world. So let's have a look at what that was.
And with that note, we wanted to understand what was happening in culture. What was happening socially? How did people feel towards the Catholic Church and religion as a whole? And with that, Lauren and I took to the streets.
Our project is on the Catholic Church, but rebranding it. So what does it mean? What are the main problems everybody has with it, and how can we change the point of view?
And what is the role of religion in people's lives?
Yeah, so that brought up that question for us. What is, because people are spiritual, just like you said, we bless our food, I pray, and there's a higher power, but what is it that people are getting more spiritual, but not going towards Catholicism, right? So we're just kind of studying this idea of religion and, why some people won't even talk to us about religion. Like, oh, religion, bye, Or like religion is, some people it's, yoga is my religion. Running is my religion. So we're kind of trying to wrap our heads around this.
And so what we found on the streets was then supported by what Dr. Joanne Beckman said. Dr. Joanne Beckman has a PhD in religion, and she listed to us the challenges that face religion today. We start with pluralism. Today we're faced with so many options. There's New Age, Islam, Christianity, Buddhism. We don't know what to choose anymore. There's secularism. Today we grow up without religious truths. And so religion is so irrelevant to us today. Cynicism. So many atrocities have been committed in the name of God. And so people no longer trust organized religion. Skepticism. Today, science and what is proven is exalted, and we no longer believe in the spiritual realm. And finally, relativism. Today, we no longer believe in foundational truths like the Ten Commandments, and so we take it upon ourselves to create our own moral and ethical codes. So what does all of this mean? There's a shift in culture. Our values are changing. And so we're still willing to join something so long as we know we have free will, control, and flexibility.
So here we are. 1.2 billion members strong, as Richard pointed out, and we are miles away from culture, as Nourah just explained. And then, all hell breaks loose. Financial impropriety, cover-up, in the unthinkable, sex abuse leads to shame. Not guilt, but shame. What is shame? The dictionary defines shame as the painful feeling arising from the consciousness of something dishonorable, a condition of humiliating disgrace. We wanted to explore shame a little bit more. We found a clip, TEDx conference from Dr. Brené Brown, an American scholar, professor, and someone who's studied a little bit more about shame, and here's what she had to say.
Shame is an epidemic in our culture. And to get out from underneath it, to find our way back to each other, we have to understand how it affects us and how it affects the way we're parenting, the way we're working, the way we're looking at each other. If we're going to find our way back to each other, we have to understand and know empathy, because empathy is the antidote to shame. If you put shame in a petri dish, it needs 3 things to grow exponentially: secrecy, silence, and judgment. If you put the same amount of shame in a petri dish and douse it with empathy, it can't survive. The 2 most powerful words when we're in struggle: me too.
A couple of other things we figured out about shame. Shame is toxic. Shame feels permanent. It's not something you can just brush away. And shame creates distance. And what we mean when we say that shame creates distance in terms of how it's manifested in Catholics is that there's a gap. And so those people devoted to the Catholic Church, people who said, I'm a Catholic, they're now using phrases like, I was a Catholic, I used to be a Catholic, my family is Catholic, but, and I'm a non-practicing Catholic. This is a problem. However, the Catholic Church has an amazing inflection point.
The point that we've reached today is we are celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Vatican II Council. Also, we have a new pope that has succeeded Pope Benedict, Pope Francis. He is the first non-European pope in 1,200 years. And he's been described as the world's parish priest. He's become much more approachable. He's brought down this level of hierarchy within the papacy, and he's been well received by the Catholic Church and its members. Also, this year has been themed the Year of Faith for Catholics. And the clergy are encouraging Catholics to reconsider their faith, come back to the Church, and re-engage with it. So with all that, we are primed to be able to achieve our mission of taking the Catholic Church out of this dark cloud of being shamed and into the light of being esteemed.
What does esteemed look like? We found this quote that brought our vision to life, and I'm going to read it to you. Our people spoke up. They love their parishes and want them stronger, more stable, if they admit, fewer. They love their priests, deacons, and sisters, hope for more, but want to share the leadership. They want their schools not just to survive, but to flourish. They want intense religious education and faith formation, not just for kids, but for our youth, young adults, and adults. They want attention to marriage and family. They want a church much better equipped in communications and technology. They want a church where Sunday Mass is celebrated with reverence, joy, a solid sermon, and full participation. They want a church embracing our Latino, African, Caribbean, and Asian newcomers. They want a church vigorous in the promotion of the culture of life, social justice, and care for the poor, sick, vulnerable, and our elders. They want a church purified, positive, and transparent. They want a church, not a museum. They want, in the words of our Holy Father, a church not confined to the sacristy, and we can't let them down. This quote is from Cardinal Timothy Dolan, an insider. With this insight, we were able to define our new positioning for the Catholic Church and the thing that will help us accomplish our mission. And that is to define the Church not by its keepers, but by the founding CEO, Jesus Christ. Who will this message impact? We've segmented our audience into 5 main groups and identified the needs that this shame has impacted. We have the clergy who have lost the trust of the public, and they need credibility. We have the faithful who hang their head down in shame, and they need pride so that when they say I'm a Catholic, they hold their heads up high. The disenfranchised who have lost the faith in this religion and want to believe in the message again. The sisters and the laity who play important roles in the church and need reinforcement. And finally, the occasionals who we like to call the CEOs, the Christmas and Easter only, who need engagement. We want them to interact with the brand on more than one occasion in a year. And through this audience, we hope to influence the public's perception of the Catholic Church.
So how are we going to reach them? Well, the Catholic Church needs to start by taking its position from being shrouded to transparent. The followers need to go from being timid to confident. The experience should be engaging, not disconnected. And our communication should not be one where the Catholic Church is pontificating, but it should be one where it feels captivating. How are we going to get there? What's our road? What's our journey to esteemed? We need to look at a brand lens. And the Catholic Church needs to create a devoted, humble, universally aligned brand. Devotion, humility, universality will be the guiding principles that align everything that the Catholic Church does moving forward. In order to begin this reconstruction, we've created a heartfelt message to the world.
We come together, the stewards and the members both, of the Catholic Church to reclaim the year of faith and become pure of heart. To our members and to the public at large, we apologize for the actions that have brought a thick fog of shame that has enveloped the church today. We are dedicated to removing this cloud and becoming esteemed in your hearts and ours. And so, united and rededicated, we will live by the principles that Jesus taught: universality, devotion, humility. The gift we must all receive will be to declare, I am Catholic, with great joy and love. And so, a binding commitment. We will behave with transparency in all that we do, so you may worship with a clear mind and heart, empowered by confidence, to reclaim pride in your faith. We will create a unifying experience across all of our houses of worship to engage all those who choose to worship with us. And we will encourage open dialogue so that we may grow and evolve together hereafter. While we know it may take years to rebuild your trust, we ask for one moment, one opportunity. Bring us your questions. Challenge us to open your hearts to forgiveness and light. Bring us your celebrations, your memorials, your quality family time. Bring us your life, and we will provide the framework to make it your best life. We are ready to come back to you. Our hope is that you come back to us. May God bless us all.
So with this lens and heartfelt message, we will move forward with our movement to change the church from shamed to esteemed, starting with symbols of resurrection. And so we ask, what would happen if all the church bells around the world rang at the same time? Will the sound and vibration shift the energy in the world? The day the bells ring and change is an official announcement of the new dawn of the Catholic Church. Our next symbol is the moving Vatican. And so we ask, what would happen if the Vatican, a place where the councils meet, becomes one that is mobile? This idea came from the insight that the clergy felt they were disconnected from the Pope. And so it is a town hall of sorts, one where the Vatican goes out to the people where they are. And finally, virtue. And so we ask, what would happen if the Catholic Church won a Pulitzer Prize for spreading real good news? The idea for virtue is to create a media engine dedicated to curating good news from around the world, not just from Catholics, but all those who generate good in the world. And with these three symbols, we'll bring back devotion, humility, and universality to the Catholic Church.
So there you have it. A Mormon, a Muslim, two non-practicing Catholics, with the selfless, gracious advisement of a Jew and an atheist, rebranded the Catholic Church. We worked hard. We laughed harder. We did it together as one. It was our small miracle. Along this journey, a couple of months ago, Lauren came to us with this book. Some of you may be familiar with this book. If you're not familiar, it is a workbook that's used to prepare Catholic school children for their first communion. Lauren brought this in with the intention of educating Nourah the Muslim and Richard the Mormon on the celebration of the Eucharist. What's amazing is that only on Friday did we discover that young Lauren, 7-year-old Lauren, had already found the answers that we were seeking. So right here on page 28, right next to this wonderful illustration of the Sermon on the Mount, we have the moral of our story. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Blessed are the pure of heart, for they shall see God.
And love one another as I have loved you.
Let your little light shine. Let your little light shine. Yeah, there might be trying to get home. Let your little light shine. Ooh, let your little light shine. Oh, my Lord, there might be someone down in the valley. Oh, well, it may be me. Well, it might be my sister or my brother too. There might be someone, yeah, trying to get home. Well, it may be me. Well, it might be my sister or my brother too. There might be someone down here, trying to get home. Well, it may be me. Oh, well, it might be your sister or your brother too. Oh, there might be someone down in the valley. Well, someone down in the valley. Yeah. Ooh. It might be the person sitting next to you. It might be that someone you just passed along on the street. It might be a cousin. Oh, it might even be you. There is someone trying to get home. Oh.
This is the Middle Church Therese Johnson Gospel Choir, just a portion of us that Lauren had invited. I just spoke to Lauren actually last week, and it was just a small exchange. And she was looking for something at the end of the presentation that would be uplifting and inspirational. And when you get calls like that, because in choir, when you do choirs, you get all sorts of calls, and people don't exactly know what they're asking for when they want a choir to come or what's involved. But I listened to Lauren because she had something really light about her, and that allowed me just to kind of listen to her and hear what she had to say. And at first I said, well, and then she told me it was at 2 o'clock. And I was like, okay, 2 o'clock. Because it's a volunteer choir, so I got people working, and they're out and they're doing stuff. I said, I could probably get you a quartet. She says, okay, let me speak to my group. Do you have any clips of you? Because I haven't heard you sing. Excellent. Okay. So I gave her our YouTube, and she saw some clips. And so this next selection is one of the clips that she saw. And she said, that's what I'm looking for. That is the message. That is inspirational. That's what I want people to go out singing. So as we close with this last song that's called Leaning on Everlasting Arms, I want to tell you that gospel music is not really a spectator thing, but it's actually a participatory event. So sometimes you may feel your feet tapping or your hands wanting to clap, or you may want to stand up, or you may want to cry, or you may want to shout in the middle of the room. And those are the effects of gospel music, because it was forged in a very powerful centrifuge, right? And it's from a people that had a great message to give us. And so this next song, Leaning on Everlasting Arms, Sherry Gill was our first soloist, Tina Cenero is our second, and she is a graduate of this institution. She designed these t-shirts that we used in the Pride float so that thousands of people could see what the message of Christ is. And so I don't think it's an accident that we're here today. And so we hope you clap and tap and sing and just celebrate not only the presentation, but Lauren and her spirit here.
I'm leaning on.
Leaning on everlasting arms.
I'm leaning on.
Leaning on everlasting arms.
I'm leaning on.
Leaning on everlasting arms.
I'm leaning. Somebody here feeling all alone. You gotta keep leaning on. Somebody here, all your hope is gone. Gotta keep leaning on. You want sunshine on a cloudy day. You ought to keep leaning on. Joy and happiness, come what may. Keep leaning. Keep leaning on.
Leaning on, everlasting arms. Leaning,
Are you leaning? Come on and lean on.
leaning on, everlasting arms. Leaning on.
Somebody here feeling all alone. You gotta keep leaning on. Somebody here, all your hope is gone. You gotta keep leaning on. You want sunshine on a cloudy day. You ought to keep leaning on. Joy and happiness, come what may, so lean. Come on and lean on.
On, everlasting arms. Leaning
I keep leaning. Come on and lean on love.
on, everlasting arms. Leaning
I'm leaning. I'm leaning on. I want you to lean on Jesus. Come on and get up. Come on and get up. You gotta clap your hands for the